Hello everyone, I am Prottoy. I was a psychology student under Reifad Zaman sir, who also teaches psychology at FES. I attended my A2 exam during this January 2026 session, and I'm kind of pleased to announce that I received an A-star in my psychology course. Now this video is going to be catered towards students who are already pursuing psychology as their existing A-level subject, and those students who are curious about the course but do not have much knowledge. I am going to also go over some of the strategies I followed for my A2 preparation, but before that, I'm going to introduce the course a bit. Now, what even is A-level psychology? What does it even mean? I'm going to talk about my own personal experience, which was under Pearson and Edexcel, but Cambridge offers a similar course as well. Now, under my course, psychology was primarily divided into 4 different segments, which can be considered the primary departments of psychology, which were cognitive and social psychology, biological psychology, applied psychology, and clinical psychology. Those are also the 4 units of the course. Now, what are these and how are they any different, and how does that impact your life, both personally and academically? You might be wondering. Well, each of these units, they prioritize and focus on slightly different concepts, different aspects of psychology, and try to go into the depths of that particular aspect. For example, cognitive psychology focuses entirely on the range of things that influence the way we think and the way we do certain things. Whereas biological psychology tries to focus on the biological variables that influence our actions and how we may end up doing things that we do not wish to do due to our biological predisposition. So it's quite the interesting subject, to be honest. Now, how does that really impact your life, as I was asking before? One thing about Edexcel psychology course and even Cambridge psychology course is that the course requires you to take the knowledge and apply it to your surroundings so that you get an understanding of the world around you. So the course is not only about you being able to pursue psychology later in your academic career, but also about you understanding the world around you, which is a pretty useful skill. And I think it is useful regardless of whether you're actually planning to choose psychology as a university degree or not. So that was what psychology Edexcel AS course even is. Now, if I talk about how to pursue A-level psychology, well, you could go down 2 different paths. One is to sit for the exam as a private candidate by self-studying, and the other is to study or learn under a tutor or a teacher. Both have their pros and cons. For starters, the pros of self-studying is that you do not have to pay any tuition fees, which may be beneficial for some. But the cons, on the other hand, of self-studying heavily outweigh the benefits, since despite of available resources, combining everything and studying efficiently can be quite difficult. With that said, it is not impossible, and if you can do it, props to you. On the other hand, studying under a tutor has its own benefits. For example, every bit of efficient resources that you'd actually need for your specific course would be handed down to you, instead of you having to scroll through internet for hours and hours, which would save you time and effort that you could spend on other aspects of your life, which can be beneficial. But the cons of studying under a teacher includes having to match your time with the teacher's time. This may be difficult for some, as your personal schedule might not match with the teacher's existing schedule of classes. Another thing that could also be a problem is that your place might not match. You might not be able to come to the institution that teaches the course on time, or it might be out of your reach, physical reach. These are some of the cons to think about when pursuing psychology under a specific teacher. Now, with that out of the way, I should get on with my specific strategies that I used for my A2 preparation. Well, I should probably start with this, but I'm pretty sure those who have already taken psychology AS already know this. But you need to go through the question papers, all the past question papers and the mark schemes, and the examiner's reports. Examiner's reports are something that students usually ignore, but for A2, it is absolutely crucial that you go through it. Now, there's a reason behind this, and that is for A2 specifically, for Unit 3 and Unit 4 exams, the teachers, the reports basically criticize sample answers of students. This was not done in AS. In A2 examiners reports for Unit 3 and 4, you would find sample student answers, what the students did that got them the mark that they got. For example, a student might have gotten 5 out of a 12-marker question. Now, why did they get that? Was there a lack of AO1 points? Was there a lack of AO3 points? Or were the points underdeveloped? Criticism includes those exact things that you need to know. There will be specific pointers that tell you why the student got the less mark or why the student got the more mark. So I would say that is absolutely needed for you to score that top band mark in most of your answers. Now with that out of the way, I would move on to the actual questions. 2 markers, 4 markers, and 6 markers are pretty important for you to score a high mark, because if you do not get the full marks in these questions, it could severely cause you a disadvantage, considering there are a lot of 2 markers that you need to answer. Now, how do you answer them? It depends on the actual question. You should realize that when a question starts with the keyword describe, there's a different type of way in which you should structure your answer. And when the question starts with the keyword examine, there's another type of way that you should structure your answers in accordance to. And it all depends. You should really look at the keyword and then look through the mark schemes, see what the mark schemes are suggesting, whether they are asking you to go for AO1 points and AO2 points, or whether they're asking you to go for AO1 and AO3 points. Like, for example, describe questions require you to mention a knowledge, which is an AO1 point, and then either link it to the case or describe more things, basically either all AO1 points or AO1 and AO2 points. They do not require AO3 points, which are evaluatory points. Whereas examine questions, when they ask you to examine something, those particular questions require you to provide 1 knowledge point and 1 evaluatory point, as in, oh, this study was reliable because this, and why this thing that the study did makes it reliable. You need to describe it. I mean, you need to explain it, basically, not describe it. And for justify questions, justify 2 markers, you need to mention a specific reference that either justifies the study or fails to justify the study. So for this particular reason, it is very important that you go through the resources and you memorize as many references as you can possibly do. So that was all about small questions, short questions. What about essay questions? Essay questions require you to properly link your AO1 points and AO3 points together, and AO2 points as well. Now, what do I mean by that? Whatever you mention as knowledge points, you need to evaluate that. You should try to evaluate every single bit of knowledge point that you mention in your answer. For example, let's say the question is a 60 marker and it's asking you to evaluate the study by Rosenhan. What do? You start with an AO1 paragraph that details the ground level concepts and knowledge about the study by Rosenhan. For example, what was the aim of the study? How was the sample? How many participants were there, and what were their occupations? What was the procedure of the study, and what were the exact findings of the study? So you give these key points about the study during the very beginning of your answer within 1 paragraph. You call that your main AO1 paragraph. And after that, you start mentioning your evaluation paragraph and points. Now, please be sure to include each of those evaluation points in separate paragraphs. Do not mix them up. Do not contain multiple points within the same paragraph. For example, let's just say you were mentioning how one strength of the study by Rosenhan is that Rosenhan used a standardized procedure for the admission diagnosis, where all the participants had to memorize the same set of cues that they were supposed to give out so that they get diagnosed with schizophrenia. Now, because of all the participants going through and memorizing the same set of cues, How does that actually make the study reliable? Well, it makes the study reliable because we can be more certain that there are less chances of extraneous variables influencing the diagnosis. Since all of them gave out the same base level cues, we can be certain that the inability of the hospital authorities of detecting whether they were fake patients or real patients is accurately represented, because those cues were supposed to look like, or those symptoms were supposed to look like, the symptoms of schizophrenia. So yeah, this tells us that the hospital authorities back in 1970s actually struggled to identify real schizophrenic patients from fake ones who might be just pretending. So yeah, that was the point. You could go into more depths of this particular point. You could mention specific key details and how this impacts the reliability. You need to chain it well. You need to properly link everything that you mention. So even if you mention or write 4 different paragraphs, 4 different evaluation paragraphs, that is fine as long as it is extremely well linked. So yeah, it's not really about quantity, it's about quality. But if you feel like your answers and your evaluation points are not that strong, then I would recommend including at least 6 different paragraphs. And to finish your essay questions, always include a conclusion. This is something that most students actually forget to do, especially for 8-marker essay questions. You need to include a conclusion for all the psychology essay questions, even for the 8 markers, especially for the 8 markers, to get the top band marks, to get 7 out of 8. And you know, in your conclusion, you must mention how everything that you've mentioned links together and what your final verdict on the study is. You shouldn't just say, oh yeah, so we can conclude, and then mention something that you've already mentioned within your answer. Don't do that. That's not going to get you the marks. You need to mention something a bit more conclusive, a bit more personalized. Oh yeah, I think. You shouldn't mention I think, but oh, so we can derive this. The study can be considered weak in terms of this because this. Be a bit specific, but be a bit personalized as well. So those are my 3 strategies when it comes to preparing for the A2 examination. I primarily use these, and obviously there are other things that you need to do as well. You need to make a list of answers. Oh yeah, I should actually mention this. For ease of studying, you should actually make a list of answers of the questions from each and every single topic. Let's just say evaluate the study by Rosenand. This is something that you should definitely list and then note down the answer. Then all the other topics, questions from all the other topics, evaluate this by this, evaluate this specific theory, then assess this by this, assess this specific theory. You should prepare answers so that during the final few days of your revision, you do not have to go through the entire book. Going through the entire book at that moment would be quite difficult. So I would say note down the answers. If you cannot write it physically, use a digital platform, type it out, use it to revise during the very last few days. So yeah, use it to revise during the very last few days. So yeah, that was it. That was my introduction to psychology, my tips and techniques for psychology, and the strategies that I've used, which I hope helps you out with your preparation. Good luck with your exam, and I hope you do well. Thank you for listening.